Once upon a time, in a faraway land where the tall mountains rose high enough to touch the sky, and where the clouds sometimes hid between the peaks and sometimes cast soft shadows over the meadows, there lived a little girl named Heidi. Heidi was only 5 years old and had never lived in a crowded city in her life. One day, she began walking up a long and rocky mountain path together with her aunt. This path did not only lead up a mountain, it stretched toward Heidi a new life ahead. Because her aunt had to work, Heidi would now live with her grandfather. As the path went on, the village below slowly disappeared from sight and was replaced by pine trees and wide open meadows. As Heidi walked, she breathed in the fresh air, felt the gentle touch of the wind on her face, and admired the colorful flowers around her. After a while, a small wooden cabin appeared on top of a hill. Thin smoke was rising from the cabin's chimney, and in front of the door, a long-bearded man was chopping wood. This man was Heidi's grandfather, and from that day on, he would become her new family. He stopped what he was doing, walked toward her, and looked into her eyes. And so Heidi began living with her grandfather in the mountain cabin. On her first night, as she lay down on her straw-filled bed, she could see the stars through the window. She had never seen stars so bright before, and because of that, she stayed awake for a long time watching the sky. The next morning, as the sun was rising, Heidi woke up and noticed the sparkling drops of dew on the grass when she opened the door. Just then, a young shepherd named Peter arrived in front of the cabin with the goats. Heidi had never seen so many goats together before. A small goat approached her, and without fear, Heidi reached out her hand and gently petted its head. From that day on, every morning, Heidi began taking the goats up to the higher meadows of the mountain together with Peter. As they walked together, they passed through flowers, watched the birds flying in the sky, and sometimes sat on large rocks to look down at the valley below. Every day, Heidi learned more about nature, understanding from which direction the wind was blowing and at what time the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Peter told her the names of the goats and which ones ran the fastest. In the evening, they returned to the cabin, where her grandfather would warm some milk and they would eat together. Days turned into weeks, and Heidi completely adapted to life in the mountains. She woke up with the sun every morning and went out to the meadows with the goats after breakfast. At noon, she rested on a large rock and watched the view of the valley below. In the evenings, her grandfather told her about the changes in nature. Heidi listened carefully and learned something new every day. When autumn arrived, the leaves on the trees began to turn yellow and the wind started to blow cooler. Then winter came and the roads were closed by snow. The meadows turned completely white and the goats could no longer go outside. Heidi spent her days inside the cabin with her grandfather. He began teaching her how to read, and Heidi patiently repeated the letters. Over time, she learned to recognize short words and became able to read small stories. Even though they could not go outside during the winter, they learned many things together. Her grandfather showed her how to stack firewood properly, how to safely light a fire, and how to keep the cabin warm during the cold weather. Heidi improved her reading by repeating the words she had learned. As the days passed, she was able to read short sentences on her own. Months passed, and when spring arrived, the snow melted and the flowers began to bloom again. The goats started going up the mountain once more, and Heidi returned to the meadows with Peter. One day, a girl named Clara, who lived in the city, came to visit Heidi with her father. Clara had been having difficulty walking for a long time and usually stayed at home. Heidi showed her life in the mountains, and they began taking short walks together. At first, Clara became tired quickly, but Heidi helped her rest. Each day they began walking a little more, and over time, Clara's steps became stronger. Thanks to the fresh air and regular walking, Clara needed her walking stick less and less. First, she took a few steps, then she walked a bit more, and finally, she managed to walk a short distance on her own. When summer came to an end, Clara returned to the city, but she was stronger now. Heidi continued her life in the mountains with her grandfather and kept going out to the meadows with the goats every morning. She improved her reading, learned more about nature, and never forgot what she had learned. And from that day on, the clean mountain air, the power of patient effort, and the value of friendship always held an important place in their lives. As Heidi grew older, she remembered everything she had learned and never lost the patience that life in the mountains had given her. 3 apples fell from the sky, 1 for Heidi, 1 for Clara, and 1 for those who listened to this story.